Investment Committee meeting of the Vallecitos Water District, August 30th at 4 o'clock. Call to order. Items for discussion. We're going to discuss provision of district's purchasing policy regarding contracts in excess of $100,000 and miscellaneous fee study. Public comment. Persons wishing to address, Mike, a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on future agenda in accordance with board policy. Limited to 3 minutes. Request to speak form required, and the rest you already know. So,
There
at this
are no
time,
masses present for wishing recognition.
Okay.
okay, so we have no public comment. All right.
The public is happy and content.
Let the record show.
Yes, we will move
Right,
this,
Mike?
we will move this over.
Well, that's a little slight.
Don't get carried away.
Yeah.
We'll move this over to RGM.
Yeah, if it would please the board, I would suggest that we take item number 2 first, so that we can free up Wes, Mike, and John. And I'll be handling the first item myself.
Please, that's amazing.
Okay, and then we can put those guys back to work. So back on
John, good to see you.
Yeah, I guess you too.
Yeah.
back on July 24th, I think it was, we had a finance committee meeting, and I think we had 6 items. It was a very busy day.
Yes, it was.
And one of the items was the miscellaneous fees. And the request by the finance committee at the time was to develop a chart showing the proposed miscellaneous fees. The way it was presented before, it was kind of hard to decipher the numbers. So I believe we have handouts we can have right now. And then these will ultimately go forward to the full board, I believe, and just being kind of vetted by the finance committee. So John, I'll turn it over to you if there's anything you want to add on this.
What we had at the July meeting was the ordinances themselves that were all redlined, and there was four different ordinances, and committee members requested that we kind of streamline it, put it all on one
Yeah, this is nice.
quick referendum.
This is easy.
Yeah. So that's what you have in front of you. The way the sheet is set up is the current ordinance that it's on now, the description of what it is, and that's a real quick description. If we want more detail on what some of these things are, some of them we can answer, some of them James or Rob over in engineering would have to step in on. The current fee is the fee that's on the current ordinance that's been adopted at this time. The fiscal year 17-18 calculated column, that's the amount that's calculated based on the level of effort required to provide the service. Mike met with each of the respective groups that handle each of these items. How long does it take? We got a average hourly rate per department, and then we added in that overhead rate that was adopted at the last meeting. The other thing that the committee members asked for was some type of comparison between other agencies. And it's not always as easy to do as it sounds, because each agency is set up a little bit differently. Some outsource a part of it and not necessarily do the whole thing. So we did what we could. We went online and we basically got their fee schedules. And we did our own kind of comparison, like this is VIDs, and we did our own kind of comparison to match theirs up to ours, and filled in those columns there, just so it's more for reference. One thing to keep in mind is that the current fee that we have adopted now is not necessarily the calculated fee when we adopted the current fee, because sometimes the calculated fee was higher, and it made more sense to be customer friendly, to be, like for instance, one of the things is the late fee. The late fee, or I'm sorry, the lock fee it's down there, it's about halfway down the page. It's ordinance 186, notice of impending lock.
Okay.
Back when we did this, I believe the lock fee was about $25. It was chosen to keep it the same rather than raise it based on what was calculated, because it makes sense when people aren't paying for their water to hit them with another amount of money they can't pay, we only end up in a cycle of trying to collect money we're never gonna collect.
Right.
So it was decided on to just leave it the way it was. But in this instance, the level of effort that's involved is about $102.
So what John's saying is important, because if you compare the current fee with the calculated fee, it's not a direct comparison. So you may see a large increase that's calculated, but that's not because it went up that much from previously. It was just the previous one was a number that may or may
Could
not
we,
have been calculated.
not to belabor them, could we zip through these real quick?
Explain what they are.
Because the first one is a question. I don't know why your deposit fee would go up. So you have a deposit fee currently $12.50. You're asking for it to be $14.84. Now it's purely a deposit they leave with us and we give it back to them. That be correct?
Yeah, and we apply it to the last bill. They have
Okay.
usage on the meter. And the construction meter actually costs that amount of money. It was $1,200. The new ones, when we did this study, were $14.84. We've just recently found some for a little bit less. So,
Well, can you only use a meter once?
no.
This is a fee, so if they don't return the meter at all,
Yeah.
we have
Right.
the money to go buy a new meter.
Oh, okay.
And the price of meters has gone up.
All right. So that's the price of what the meter costs to replace if they don't
Yep.
return it. Does that happen?
Yeah.
Very
Or they
often?
break.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
That one's a little bit different in character than most of these fees.
That's what I was, when he was explaining, I'm going,
Yeah.
that's a different animal.
So it's really a deposit.
It's kind of a deposit, you know.
Meter relocation, installation, removal,
Mm-hmm.
from $150 to $229. So that's when they changing a location, or we have to, when you install it, you know you're gonna have to remove it.
Yeah.
That be correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or you assume you have to remove it. Sometimes they remove it for you, and that's when you don't get it back.
Or yeah, or they'll move it somewhere else and we don't know where it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have to track that.
Yeah, it makes it hard to read when you don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Now, and just out of curiosity, if they were to have it, these are ones that fit on the fire hydrants. So if they were to move it on their own,
Mhm.
why would they need to have a meter on it? They're stealing water. I mean, do they have to put that, does that have to be on a fire hydrant for order them to obtain water?
They could, well, they could just hook a hose to the fire hydrant like the fire department does and get water. Yeah.
Right.
But we have the meter to measure the amount of water that they're actually using so that we can bill them based on the reading of the meter.
So when they move a meter, it's, they're being legit, putting it on another fire hydrant, they just need it in a different location.
Yes.
But we go out and do that for them, and they do it themselves.
We request that they tell us that they want it moved so that we can be sure that the water that's used going through the meter at the end, and then it starts with the water that they start using.
The question was, who does the physical relocation?
Our meter department.
Right.
And that costs money.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
have somebody out there doing that, that
Mhm.
makes sense.
There's also, construction meters are this whole new world right now. We've been using meter, we haven't bought a new meter in the time that I've been here. But recently, we're gonna go and we're gonna
How long
buy.
have you been here?
We're gonna, 12 years.
You haven't bought a new meter in 12 years?
Not for
Construction.
construction meter, yeah.
Oh,
So we're buying some new meters that are now radio read. So if they move them, we can find them. We can drive
Ah.
around and find the meter. The other thing is that there's these things called cuffs that go around the meter and around the hydrant to where they can't move them.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be using those in the future?
Yeah. So
But we don't use them now.
we don't use them now. No, we're just ordering them now.
But we have the same amount of meters now that we did X amount of years ago, which means we haven't lost any.
No, we've
And we just,
lost some.
we just haven't bought any.
Yeah.
We might not have the
Oh.
exact same
Yeah.
amount.
We had an overabundance.
Yeah. Well, during the boom, when construction was just going crazy in the early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s,
Send them.
yeah, we had a whole bunch of them, and then what we started doing was we started Frankensteining them. As you know, we take a part out of this and put it in that to get a working meter.
Payback calculation,
That is when someone's at the end of the road and they want to have the main extended to them, and then other houses come along and want to tap into that main. The person at the end of the road paid for the whole main. The people coming in now have to pay back the person who extended the main for the portion. So there's a calculation involved in that, and it's something engineering does.
So if there's a cul-de-sac and I've bought the last house on it, when I pay my fees, or the developer, when I pay my fees, I'm paying for the whole water main.
Or sewer main. For instance, if you were at the end of a long road and you were using septic and you
Right.
say, I want to get, annex in or whatever, get in, and you pay for that long sewer main, and then somebody else comes in and builds a house,
Right.
then they're gonna pay you the payback. But
So
we-
I'm gonna get, as a homeowner, I'm gonna get a payback.
Yep, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
And this
So
is to
what-
calculate how much. We need to,
Yeah.
we need to do the math to figure it out. But if you're the first guy to build, you don't pay the fees for everybody. You're just paying the construction costs. for
Right.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
so these actually don't get paid back to the district, they get paid back to the original
Yeah.
resident?
Yeah,
Oh, that's a payback to the resident, not to the district.
yeah.
But this is a fee that comes to the district to do the calculation to determine how much money goes back to the developer.
Oh, I see, so this is what we
Okay,
charge
this is
for
just-
us to do the calculation.
It's
not-
for the engineers, yeah, how much time does it take them to calculate this and do the
Okay,
study?
that makes sense.
Yeah.
My next question was gonna be, well, what if it's a really long street? It's not gonna be one size fit all,
No.
right? So,
Yeah, it's just to figure things out.
Okay.
And sometimes there's rock or there's something else underground that.
So
I got
then
you.
that-
So this is
that-
what we charge to,
Right.
And then
to do the
whatever,
math.
whatever that person charged to move in between, out of his money, part of it comes to us and part of it goes to the other guy. The guy that built the whole thing doesn't get all of it, he gets a percentage of it, because we take out $1,000 or $1,700 or $2,300 to do the estimate.
For the payback?
Yeah, so you
Sure.
built this guy at the end paid for everything.
Yeah.
This guy moves into the middle here,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to pay X amount. That X amount is figured out by us. Part of it comes to us for that fee, and the balance then goes to the guy out here.
Yeah, what the payback is for the construction of the main, to have basically have the pipe put in.
Right, which the guy at the end paid for
Yeah,
initially.
yeah,
So he's getting a piece back,
yeah,
but not all of it, because we're charging him
None.
to calculate how much that is.
yeah, yeah. And not all of it, because the person who comes in the middle is paying from the middle to here, not from where it originated all the way to the last guy in the, yeah.
Okay. And then if someone comes in between the
Yep.
original and the middle, they pay a, so that's where the calculation.
Now you can see why we charge a couple
That's worth
thousand
money.
dollars.
I got it, yeah, that's ridiculous, but it makes sense. Additional charge for unlock after district hours, 186,
Yeah,
and that's to have someone drive out and unlock it after. And is it someone that does that, or is it one of the 4 people that have one of our vehicles out there already?
it's the duty person that has the vehicle already.
Okay, so the person that already has our vehicle has to go and what does he get paid for that extra? Does he get time off?
He gets a duty pay rate for the time that he's on duty. Yeah. So
And
it's not an additional, oh, I got called out today, therefore I put something else on my time card. They were already on duty and they're getting paid that increment
Right,
in the hourly wage for being on duty.
and that, I mean, I don't know how long it takes to lock or unlock a lock, but I'm guessing anywhere in San Marcos, 2 hours, an hour to get there and an hour to get back, worst case scenario. Would that make sense?
2 hours, yeah, that's probably a little on the high side, yeah.
I'm figuring, I'm trying, and it's $186.
Yeah, the
Moving up
time.
from 75, so
Yeah.
moving up 2 times plus.
And I think 75 was the original. I don't think 75 got altered in 2013. I think we kept that the same.
and
It's 1
Okay, 1 3/4 hours.
Almost spot on. You almost right there.
Yeah.
An hour and 45 minutes.
Okay, an hour and 45 minutes, and how much do we charge an hour? What's our
For that labor rate.
labor rate?
Well, it depends on the person.
Okay, what's our,
So-
a person that's driving one of
It's
our
duty.
vehicles,
It's Sudi says construction.
picking up
Yeah.
furniture
Yeah.
on
I
his
didn't
way,
bring up that one.
stopping and,
Okay, yeah, it's our construction. Usually our construction people are on duty. Yeah.
so what's their per hour rate?
Well, I can
We have their,
back into
their
it.
average, yeah.
You can back into it.
I just wanna know if that makes sense at an hour and 45 minutes.
Well, you gotta.
But they only get the
subtract out
differential,
221.
I got it calculated. I'll back into it.
but they only get the differential, they don't get the full amount. Because they're only getting paid a differential, they're not getting paid.
The duty.
They're already on duty.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's already being taken care of.
Yeah.
So they're already being paid.
yeah.
So what is that on duty time costing us? Which would be
Now the
the,
difference.
yeah.
No, it's not even time and a half, it's just duty pay. Yeah, it's, I can write something up, how we pay our duty people, so I have it.
Well, just want to know if that
spot
equals
on.
186. That's all I'm trying to figure out is, are we charging a fair amount? Is that what?
We gotta take the 186, back out the 221.
Right.
So
Zero
$100
rate.
yeah, $106 an hour. And some change.
Well, then divide by 221 because of the overhead rate. Divide that by 2.21.
48.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
48.
Dollars an hour.
$48 an hour.
So and for 1.45 hours,
1.75.
that's what we're charging is $48 an hour? Or that's what we should be charging?
That's what we should be charging, yeah, because that's what was.
Yeah, if you want to fully cover your costs, including overhead costs.
$48 an hour.
No, plus the 221.
Plus the 221.
Yeah,
We'll
Plus
get
the
it.
overhead rate.
Yeah.
The 48 is the direct labor rate, and then you add, and I think you should divide by 3, 1 plus the 221% to find out what the hourly rate should be. But yeah, you have to figure out what's his hour rate plus 221% of their hourly rate gets you to this, times the 1.3 hours.
So is that number correct using that formula?
Yes.
Well, and before we go on to, I just point of clarification. These are just the calculated rates that all of the different stakeholders who work in these departments calculated. But this is not necessary. Is this staff's recommendation that we switch to these, or is this just what this is just the cost and that's it?
That's
It's just
yeah.
Okay.
cost and that's-
So there's no recommendation necessarily that the board adopt these as is.
No.
It's a philosophical approach by the board. If you wanted to collect all the costs, you would collect this.
Because I also, not to get us too far off, if Director Martin wants to go through every single line, but you know, I'm very curious to see how, or agencies like OMWD, that they don't collect anything for almost all this stuff. So how do they do it? Like where do they? I mean, they're obviously recouping the cost somewhere. Is it in the rates or?
A blank doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a fee.
Yeah.
It means we couldn't
Oh.
find their fee on the website and
Oh,
match
okay.
it up easily with ours.
Okay, I thought the blank just meant
No.
we didn't have one.
I looked on their website. I checked for any ordinances. I went on all their different departments and I couldn't find anything.
Because
So we didn't go sit down with their finance folks and try to match things up.
I see.
Okay, backflow administration, $250 a month. Get a backflow administration, escalated letters per letter. We're not charging anything now, and we're looking at charging $10 if we mail it and $25 if we hand deliver it. Is that what staff is saying?
Is this if people are not in compliance with their
Yeah.
annual test?
Mhm. Yeah. Because we now outsource the test, the data processing portion of the backflow, and they do the first two notifications. The third notification would come in-house, and then we just kind of piggyback on to what it is to lock a meter.
Have we been doing that? We've been hand delivering people?
Yeah, we do it every day. Or, well, we do it, I'm sorry, we do it twice a week.
Not necessarily just for backflow
No,
administration,
yeah, but
for all types of
yeah,
notices.
for any lock meter, yeah, we have to give them 48 hours notice.
And hand delivery is $25 for any time that you have to go out.
No, actually, hand delivery is more than that. Well, there's, if you look at the notice of impending lock, 48, it says 48 days. It should be 48 hours. That's
Where's the
way,
pending lock?
we're way ahead of the game on that one.
It's
No, it's
right,
well,
right in the middle, it's a white
Yeah.
row.
Notice of pending lock, okay.
And we're currently is 25. If we were to look at what it costs to do it, it's about $102, but that includes more staff. I mean, there's customer service staff that's involved. There's meter staff that's involved, and then of course you got the overhead rate on top of it. But we handle it the most. And that was one of the ones where we chose to keep it at $25 rather than use the rate that was counted.
Late fee,
Mm-hmm.
10% of unpaid
Balance, yeah.
balance after 35 days.
Mm-hmm.
NTE,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed. And it looks like we're just gonna make it to exceed, made $97.
Yeah.
So would all the other provisions be the same? It's just the not to exceed that we're.
But I think from one board member's perspective, I would recommend that we just leave it at 10%. I don't even think credit card companies have a $97 late fee. And that water is one of those things that people, you know, I think we gotta be a little bit sensitive about.
97 is not to exceed, so let's say if they're past due $1,000, 10%
Oh, that's
would be
the not to,
$100.
so the 97 is the not to exceed.
And not to exceed.
Okay, I
Yeah,
got you.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
I
It's,
thought that
it's
was
everything
gonna-
the same.
I thought that was gonna be the fee.
No, I could only put a number in there so
Uh-huh.
it calcs. I couldn't put words
Okay.
in that column. Well, I could.
But all those words
take the
and the
formula
current
out.
fee applies still, 10%.
Yes.
Okay, I got you. So
I just chose to take down my website for my own personal business and go out of business, basically, the wedding business. And I sent that to the city. They sent me a bill for $100 for a late license fee, which I don't need.
Yeah.
But I went $100 for what? So I have to go and talk to them. But it was like, really? That's kind of ridiculous. Look at the fees that government charges. Like, new account deposit stays the same. Notice of impending lock, you're looking at going up 4 times what it is now. Or at least that's what the numbers say you should be charging. You're not looking for it. Are you gonna have a recommendation? I think Mike already asked us. Are you gonna have a recommendation that we do this?
I think it would probably come from this committee right here. It'd probably be the best way to handle that.
Oh,
And those would end up being recommendations to the board for their consideration.
okay. So, but we could recommend to the board by pulling a few of these for the whole board to look at. In other words, there's some here that I don't agree with,
Right.
but and I wouldn't agree with as a member of this group. But I'd like the whole board to look at it and see how they would vote on it. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, and that's one of the things that we talked previously. It'd be really helpful if the committees, not just the finance, but the engineering committee,
Right.
help us develop recommendations for the whole board. There may be times where I have a recommendation. On these, I really don't. I mean, because I think some of them have a lot of political sensitivity, and that's the business
Right.
you guys are in.
Right. By the way, I have to just mention this at the Cal meeting. It was at the dinner, the quarterly dinner meeting. It was an interesting presentation by Sandag.
Yeah.
And what I really liked is as soon as the political question was asked, the representative went and found Ron Morrison and passed him the mic.
Okay.
Didn't say a word. I mean, staff knew, I'm staff, that's political, I shouldn't be talking about that. I mean, it was very encouraging to see. It's like, yeah.
That's how you survive in that business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's how you should. Pulled meter, 257, and you only pull a meter for not paying?
Mhm.
Why else would you pull a meter?
Yeah.
Reconnection, it's okay. With a few exceptions, I can, we're gonna bring this to the board, but, and I'll just note the few exceptions I have and see what they say.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be
Does that make
great.
sense? I mean, those are a great job, but it's just like, note some if they wanna jump that fast. Seeing as they didn't wanna jump last time, And I was wondering, I remember that, we didn't wanna jump all the way last time, maybe we still don't wanna jump all the way, but wanna jump part of the way. But when it comes to money, I like the full board to make that final decision.
Yeah. And Director Martin, that may be a good way to do it, to say the Finance Committee recommends that no fee increase by more than 50%. You know, and obviously not to
Right.
exceed the maximum, but in no case more than 50% in any given year.
Right,
So we may be trying to catch the actual, but it may take us several years to get
to
there.
get up there.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You gotta get it around the
I
paths.
heard that somewhere.
I know.
Can I use that?
I won't take credit for that.
Okay. Make a deck, 28. What other ones jump out at you guys? Anything?
The plan check one a little bit. On the back page.
Pension. Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't that really depend on the average plan check or what you're checking? I mean, you plan check San Alejo, or you plan check a single homeowner.
Mike, is that a per sheet or is that a?
I'm trying to find that right now.
$4.52 a sheet, $170 a page. Oh,
9 point in the bottom?
VID and, yeah, your benefits.
OMWD certainly doesn't tell you much about what they do they?
No, hard to find.
They don't want people to know anything.
Yeah.
They must not have that transparency award like we have.
Okay, so the 1785 is a deposit though, so it really depends on the amount of time for each particular project. If a project's only 1 hour, they'll only be billed 1 hour, but it's a deposit
Of 1789.
of 1785. Because the average plan check they figured out is 1785, so that's what we did.
85 or 89?
Or whatever's there, I'm sorry.
89.
89. So I have it rounded on here.
Okay.
So I just
Would
think that
Would that be a single family home? I mean, is that,
Well, it's a deposit too, so
Right.
they could give it to us if the plan check goes quickly and it's less time and they figure out their actual hours, they get the balance back. So, but they just figure the average plan check.
so that would be one I'd want to probably discuss as a board, just to see if we really want to go up all the way to 1789 and from 500.
well, what's the water study? 'Cause that's doubling in price as well, almost. There's two ordinances for water study, both going from $2,300 to $4,000.
One's water and one's sewer. Is that what you're?
Thank you.
Okay.
I do need glasses. Water study, sewer study. What's the study?
Is that just to ensure that there's adequate,
Yeah.
adequate capacity to serve whatever development it
Yeah,
is?
they use the models and they,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we have a computerized model that, for a water model and a wastewater model, and if somebody comes in and places a demand on the system, we have to run that through the computer model to make sure we can absorb it.
Okay, but let me ask you a serious question. It's gonna sound, I love so much about computers, and I understand that sometimes all you do is push one button. And it sounds to me like this water study is already in the computer, and all you do is walk in and say, one single family home, 4 people, and it spits it out on a piece of paper.
Yeah,
That can't be worth $4,000.
I don't think it's quite that easy, but I don't know the specifics, and I assume when Mike sat down with the engineering folks, it's probably with Rob, he walked through the number of hours that it takes to run a study.
And again, this one is a deposit, so if it took 15 minutes, we would charge 15 minutes worth. If it took 10 hours, we would charge 10 hours worth, and we just count it as a deposit, and then we get the balance back.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the committee and ultimately the board to explain when a number is
It's
a deposit.
Right, that's what I'm marking
Okay.
right now.
And then if it is a
Agreed.
deposit, what is the hourly rate that we're
Right.
charging? So it's like $200 an hour, whatever the number is. We'll take a deposit of $17.89 up front, but it's an actual cost of service. And I don't know if they get an estimate. When they come in, if they come in with a set of plans that's a foot high, it's not gonna be $17.89.
Right, right.
So,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and if you are going to add more information, I suspect that some of these are more for like builders and developers than others, and
Yeah.
others are more for like the typical residential or business customer. Can you like maybe color coordinate the ones that are primarily for construction development, and then ones that are residential, and maybe one, and then a third color for commercial?
we
And
can,
then if there's one that like is for all three, then you can just leave
What
it.
I can do is I can add a column and put B, R, C, or
Okay.
like A for all.
Whatever's easier,
Or something like
yeah.
that. I think
So-
it's easier that way.
Director Snell, if you look on the first page, like starting at the 9th one, which says inactive, ready to serve fee, all the way down, probably through return check charge. Those are all the ones that hit well, I'll call it typical customer that may be having some problems paying their bills.
The 186, ordinance 186.
Yeah, or 186 covers more than that. But a lot of these other ones, like a payback calculation, doesn't affect Joe Citizen for the most
Yeah.
part.
Well, in one of the last conferences I was at, they brought up the fact that you do a 218 process, when you get it all written out and you've had all your staff check it, bring it to 5 people that aren't staff, friends, brothers, sisters, and say, read it. And every time they ask a question, mark it down as something you have to change on that. And I am a true believer in that. And at number 9, you're gonna bring up inactive RTS fee.
That's our
The average person doesn't know what an RTS is.
Right.
So it needs to say ready to serve fee,
Okay.
I think. I think the easier you make it, the more transparent you make it, the better off it is where you can do it. But I'm a firm believer in that, and I think the 218 process would go over a lot better if we had some non-water people read it after and go, well, what's that mean? You know, what's a fugitive odor? You know, I mean, they just don't know.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked, just my thought process when this comes before the whole board is going to be, you know, for those, like developers, for example, while I don't want to take advantage of them and overcharge them, I definitely want them to pay their, you know, whatever the calculated amount is. I want them to at least cover the expense that they're burdening the board, the district with. A typical resident who's having, you know, falls on some tough times and is having trouble paying their bill, I don't want to go too crazy on a late fee because that person needs to drink some water. So that's just the difference. I think it's kind of common sense.
How do we handle that at customer service? Someone calls up and they've fallen on hard times and they need water and they're behind 30 days.
Yeah, John can address it. We deal with that on a daily basis. And we
Okay.
pretty much bend over backwards to help our customers.
In the recession too, we saw it all during the recession. We have various ways we do payment plans, and so long as they're current on their payment plan, we will not lock, and we'll also suspend late fees for past due balances, so long as they're willing to work with us and making an honest attempt to pay. We have other items where we implemented this thing a couple of years ago. If an elderly person or someone's going in for treatment, for cancer treatments or something like that, they can let us know, and because they've got enough to worry about. So if the bill goes unpaid for a certain amount of time, we have that account flagged, and we can see, that we call it a care customer. And we see that's a care customer, and we're not going to assess late fees. We're not going to send lock notices. We're not going to do that. We're just going to suspend everything. At some point in time, that customer is going to catch up with us when they're all done, or a family member if it goes to that length, and then we'll start working with that person to resolve all the back.
So we work with everyone that stays in contact with us.
Yeah. If we
It's the
don't,
person that
yeah.
just doesn't answer you that you have to go through this because you don't know if there's something wrong.
And we reach out for high usage. When we're doing our billing, we'll get the meter read, and all of a sudden it's spiked, and we'll say, "Wow, this is going to be a big bill." So we don't want to just mail it to you and surprise. So we reach out. We call that a high usage call, and our customer service reps actually contact that customer.
Who physically sees that? Who's the one that makes that call?
The making the call is customer service.
Okay, but makes the call to make the call.
Makes the decision.
Makes the decision,
Who's
make the call.
decision maker?
There's algorithms that we have set up that are going to say, you know, their normal usages within this band. All of a sudden, bang, they spiked up. You know.
So that account will get flagged
Yeah.
and put on the desk of a customer service rep, and then that helps generate the list of the phone calls that we're going to be making.
Yeah. And sometimes they say, oh, we had a leak. Or sometimes they don't know that they had a leak and start looking around and realize, oh, I've got a leak. And then we work with them for that also, to make a one-time adjustment.
Okay, so you guys are gonna add some more detail on this, and then if you email me a copy of it, I could probably make some notes and maybe without having to come back for another meeting. I don't know what you think, but
Yeah, just email us both, make it simple.
before we go to the whole
So we
board.
can look at it.
And then we'll get feedback from you, not at a meeting, and if we can digest it and make sense of it, we'll just agendize it for a board meeting, and if we think we need one more shot at it, the finance committee will schedule that.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys got it. It'll be pretty simple.
Okay.
Don't make it more difficult. But
This is
don't
very
make it-
helpful. Thank you.
This is great. This shows a whole lot. And sorry about trying to check with other agencies. We should know by now that a lot of agencies don't give that information out and you can't find it. And don't want to send you on wild goose chases. I'm sure you have better things to do, like fixing leaks.
Yeah, and even if we were able to get their information, it doesn't tell you what thought process they went through, because we'd see what the actual charge, but we don't know what their calculated charge would be.
Well, yeah, and just using a Liebenheim construction meter deposit, you know they have one.
Yeah.
And if they don't have one, as Mike said earlier, that means they're getting it from somewhere else.
Right.
So, and everyone does that differently, as we found out through the 218 process. Everyone does it all a little differently, which is, we kind of wish the court would make up and set it, because that would make life easy for everybody. If the court just said, this is the way you do it, rather than, yeah, go do it, and we'll let you know if there's a problem when you get the attorney's letter. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so clear? You got the direction?
Can I ask a few questions?
Yeah, sure, yeah, it's not a board meeting, it's a
Yeah.
committee meeting.
One of the things that's coming up are granny flats. And one of the helps for those is to expedite the processing and charging the fees for those. Now, are you having to deal with that, or is there something coming down the state or something?
I know in the,
Go ahead.
I know in Rob's group, in community development, Eileen and Rob have been discussing that. So it's on the radar, exactly what the process is gonna be, how it's gonna work, I don't know. But I know that they're aware of it.
And my understanding, right, late payment is $97 fee?
No, I think the
Not
the
to
not
exceed.
to exceed, and that's
Not
the
to exceed.
calculated.
It's
Current-
10%.
10%.
Yeah. So if somebody has $100 bill, which is pretty
Yeah,
typical,
make sure the
then they would have
10% is.
they would have a $10 fee.
And this CARE program on late payment and such,
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be highlighted to the public. Because sometimes you don't ask for help
Mm-hmm.
when you don't know it's there.
Well, we have to be careful of that, because if we make it seem too easy, then everybody will say, well, I'm still bail
The
myself.
opposite will happen. If you
Yeah.
make it look like that, then I found that out at the Boys and Girls Club. Once you let them know that we scholarship every kid, whether they have that $40 a year or not, surprising how many people didn't have $40 a year for their kid.
Yeah.
They all wanted to be scholarship. So yeah, you want to be careful and, trust that people will ask. If they're hurting, people ask.
Yeah. I've talked with a lot of these customers personally, and you can tell.
Yeah,
Well, do you
yeah,
put
would
that
know the
out on
difference.
the late fee notice?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
those customers that fall under this area, like late payments or whatever, we treat them differently, and they get told what programs are available to them. But we're not putting it on the website.
No,
It would just invite too much.
exactly. It invites abuse.
Now, what about request for a larger meter?
That goes through engineering. Yeah, if somebody wants to increase the capacity for a larger meter, they,
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so that becomes part of the updating the whole engineering.
Let's just stick to finance here.
Yeah, it's almost a plan check.
Okay, so
It's
we
an
don't do
improvement
that.
to the property.
And the high-use calls, isn't that, that'll be automated, I would imagine.
No. Because each one is different. So we call those customers individually, and we let them know that They're outside the range of what they normally are. Some people say, yeah, I know, I had to drain my pool and fill it. You're like, oh, okay, well, there's the reason right there.
We have low use flags as well. If somebody's using 10 units a month, all of a sudden it drops down to 0. We may not call them. We're going to go out and see what's happening. Is the meter working properly? Have they bypassed the meter? Maybe they're on vacation. You know,
Or they put in a well,
they put in a I see that a lot.
which a lot of the commercial people have done.
Yeah.
Marcon's done it, our friend Dion's done it,
Yeah.
a lot of them put wells in, if they don't need potable water.
And what about the data processing? You've outsourced? How much of that?
What was the question, I'm sorry?
How much of the data processing is outsourced?
Well, I guess it depends what you call data processing.
Yeah, that needs to be defined, but I can tell you that meter reading is automated, so we drive by, collect the reads electronically. Those reads are uploaded, reviewed. The ones that fall out of that range, the high-low read, as we were saying, electronically transferred into our billing system. The bills are generated, the electronic file is generated, that file is sent to a third party. They do the print and mail. And they also host the online where customers can go in and check their balances, check their usage, and pay their bills.
Okay, last question. On the refunding fee, what if a developer puts in a line themselves, let's say an 8-inch line for one phase, then builds another one, and they have to go back and increase the entire line? Do they get
Upsize the line.
for the next phase? Do
Well,
they get any refund?
That sounds like it's more new development as opposed to someone who's lived at the end of a really long road.
Yeah.
And that's typically the case for a long time, and they've had septic and they want to have a sewer main put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they've had a well and the well's gone dry, now they want to tap into
Do you
the water.
have just an estimate of how much refunds that we had?
I think in the 12 years I've been here, I've done 3 would be a lot.
Okay,
Yeah, three of those calculations would be a lot.
thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, that concludes the
All right,
miscellaneous
thanks,
fee
guys.
study.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. Well, that's what you've been doing, hasn't it?
If you have an extra copy, I'd appreciate that.
Of which?
Proposed.
Oh, I don't have an extra copy.
I have one, but it's a little
Director's
bit. Oh, I
Exhibit
wrote
again?
on mine.
They're not necessarily
Size of
proposed.
it.
John,
Killing me.
if they were contracts with
Did you
the
get from
Velvet,
Ken?
I had trouble thinking I had one copy. Do you happen to have every day?
15, 16, 16, 17, so that's one set. This is 15, 16, 16, 17, so here's another set.
Awesome, thank you. That's all I
And
need.
you got yours,
I got mine.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Mike, just to clarify, these are not proposed rates. These
Right,
are
I'm
fees.
not.
Yeah, these are what they currently are and what they currently cost us.
You ready for item number 1?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess you can't. I'm in my mind, I'm wrapping my head around. I like the item we do need to talk about, but because it's discussing salaries, and could be discussing salaries, whether or not it needs to go to closed session.
Item 1?
Yeah, I know we haven't set it up as that, but I'm just thinking now, maybe that needs to be a closed session item, because we are discussing salaries and very highly sensitive issues.
I'm
I'd rather
assuming-
not discuss that.
Yeah, I'm assuming one of the things that's going to come up into this item is going to be
Yes, it is.
our legal services
Yeah.
that we
Yes.
contract with. And just strictly from an RFP standpoint, I do agree with Rick Martin that we probably do need a venue to have some discussions about where we are with the current firm what we may be looking for, what all that, you know, as far as cost savings, services, capabilities, and those types of things. And I think if I was a potential bidder, I could go back and listen to this whole conversation. I think that would be, you know, maybe not so appropriate. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss any of the other ones, like the chemicals and those kind of things that we're getting in our policy, that's one thing.
We can talk about that if
Yeah,
if we'd
I
like.
think that's good, but I think that one item is one we need to stay away from until we can do a closed session, which we can do a closed session with the two of us, but you can check with Scott to see exactly how that's done. I think it's done the same way.
Right.
You just have a closed session chat about it, because it is highly sensitive, it is financial,
Yeah.
and it is about salaries.
Okay, so that was gonna be the majority of what we were gonna talk about today, but I
That just came up in my mind.
Yeah, let me hand these out to you, and what these are,
Thank you.
so at a previous board meeting, the question was asked, you know, what services do we have that are over $100,000? So what you see in front of you is a spreadsheet for 2 fiscal years. One is 15-16, one is 16-17. And what we did is we ran through our payrolls, or not payroll system, but our pay system, total payments to any entity over $100,000. And that's what ends up on this list. So maybe we could just look at the 16-17. There's no need to look at both. And
Oh, okay.
all this was intended to do is to show you, there's a lot of repeat business you'll see. So maybe I'll start at the, if you start at the bottom, so to go to the one that says fiscal year 16-17, at the bottom, we paid a lot of money to Aqua JPIA, we paid money to SDG&E, and we paid money to Olivenhain for the treatment services we get.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's what the board was talking about.
Those would be difficult to compete.
Yeah,
If you go to
I'm not sure
the
about that.
middle group, it says capital projects. This is money we paid to construct capital projects. Again, I don't think this is what the board was thinking about, because these were competitively bid
Yep.
to get the project done in the first place. So I
Right.
think what we were talking about is the items at the top of the list. So,
Ones where we have discretion as to who gets what.
right. So if you look at the top in the 16-17, the top one is Ben's asphalt and maintenance. So this is when we repair, if we have to go in and fix a water main break or some kind of a service leak, we'll go out and our crews will do the repairs and they'll put some temporary paving, but then we go back in. After we have a bunch of these throughout the service area, then we'll put out a contract to do the final paving. We'll go out and we'll get bids, we'll select the lowest competent contractor and he'll go out and do it. And we may do this a half a dozen times a year. So it just so happens that Ben's Asphalt put in a lot of low bids that year and he ended up getting paid a lot of money that year. But if you look at the previous year, Ben's Asphalt isn't on there. So maybe we either didn't do as many asphalt repairs or there are other firms.
So, in my opinion, sorry, Director Martin.
No, great.
In my opinion, you guys are compliant with the ordinance because you're competing in
Right.
every single. Once you get a certain amount of work, you're competing it within 5 years.
Right.
And I think that's what the ordinance.
That's
was.
my perspective too.
But if you get a contractor that doesn't do the job or doesn't do the job right, you then can mark him as incompetent
And-
during your deliberations as to who you're going
Yes.
to choose. So although he may be the lowest, he may not be competent because you know it, because you used him before and he didn't do the job.
Absolutely.
So you
And
cross him off.
in the paving world, we have that exact situation where there's a bidder that we blackballed. His work was so bad that we blackballed him. He's been on the list for 3 years. He's now asking to be put back on the list. So we're reviewing his request and basically saying, why do we think our experience with you will be any different than it was before?
Right.
If he can demonstrate, hey, I fired half my crew, or I got a new accounting system, or, if there's substantive things that they've done, we may consider them. Doesn't
Do we
mean
ever
will.
request a bond from them?
We do. It depends on the value of the project and what they have to put forward. On a full capital improvement program job, they definitely have to bond. But on some of these smaller jobs, they may put a letter of credit or something in. We have some type of security to make sure that their work is up to par. So the second item on the 16-17 is the legal services, and I think that's what the two directors were alluding to. So maybe skip over that for a second. Kind of going through the next 4 items, they're chemical purchases. Now, on some of these are sole source. We're buying a chemical that's only made by one firm, so there's not a whole lot of choice there. In other cases, it's a chemical that's made by numerous entities, but there's only one provider in the service area that can meet our time requirements, so we don't have a lot of flexibility. There are some chemicals that we do have some flexibility with, and we will be looking into competitively bidding those. So for example, US Peroxide, they provide a proprietary product. Aquametrics isn't chemicals, but like Polydyne, I don't know if Polydyne, yeah, they show in both years. It's again a product, they're the sole source for that. That's the only company locally that we can buy it from. But there are a few chemicals that we're going to be, and I talked with Dennis Bowman, our purchasing agent today, to ask him not only to look at competitively evaluating those internally, but also working with surrounding agencies, because a lot of these surrounding agencies are buying the same chemicals. So if we
Who's
can-
our purchasing agent?
Dennis Bowman downstairs.
That's what he does for us?
It's part of what he does. Yeah, he makes sure that we comply with the purchasing policy. So if we ever want to buy something, go see Dennis, and he'll go purchase it.
It goes through
He
Dennis.
goes through Dennis.
Okay. Is that Dennis's, what is his title?
I think he's a procurement officer, or I don't know his exact title, but he's based. Ann, I don't know if you know Dennis's title, but he's like purchasing agent, procurement officer.
Purchasing
Yeah.
supervisor, I'm not sure.
So he oversees the warehouse. So when we go buy a couple hundred water meters, we send it to him. He goes out and gets the best price. Then he buys them, and he obtains them. They get shipped. He takes them. He puts them in the warehouse, puts them in the proper places, does inventory control. He kind of controls the whole
Okay,
life
that's-
cycle
that's his
of anything that we buy. Same thing with chemicals. Not all of them get stored in the warehouse.
Right.
A lot of our chemicals go right to
On
the
site.
metal arc or wherever they need to be. So again, we'll look at the chemicals, but there's not a lot of flexibility there.
There's a chemical we just got rid of, we're not using anymore. We did something to stop the use of it, we changed to a different type of
Yeah,
chemical.
sometimes I think it's the trioxin. There's certain chemicals that are in vogue for a while, and then some brilliant chemist somewhere else will develop a better mousetrap. And typically it's for odor control in our wastewater system. Somebody will develop something that is less aggressive to the system, controls odors better. We tend not to be a leader in adopting those. We wait and see, is the industry, is it working out there? And then if it seems to be working, particularly in the local environment, then we'll try it.
Did we do that with ductile iron, is it ductile iron?
Ductile iron pipe?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, ductile iron pipe. That was everybody was using that in the 80s. So that was the best material that was available at the point in time.
it's just amazing that, I guess there's no UL laboratory for pipes, but it just seems to me that there'd be an industry to do the same thing if you're installing sewer pipes, that you would have it tested
Yeah.
over time. And
Yeah. So that's the problem. The time. Some of the stuff we'll put a pipe in the ground and it'll be fine for 10 years, but in year 11 it starts to go bad. I don't know if they're expect a laboratory to test something for 10
Right.
years.
Yeah, I don't know how they because laboratories do that, they speed up time.
They do accelerated testing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. So chemicals we talked about. Fuel. So the Southern Counties lubricants, they provide all of our fuel. And just February this year, we went out and competitively bid it. It's really commodity driven. You know, they buy fuel on the market at a certain price, and then they charge you a little surcharge to actually deliver it. But we went out and did a competitive solicitation, so I'm comfortable we have the best fuel price.
So fuel we store on site, gas and diesel,
Yeah, we have it delivered to our underground tanks.
here.
Yeah, here.
What's the side of the truck say when it shows up?
What does this have?
Does the side of the truck say Southern Counties Lubricants?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if these guys are like a third party that just
Yeah.
identifies it, or if it says.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never actually seen the fuels get delivered. Aquametric, we use a particular meter type. We specify it, and it's a proprietary product, and it can only come from Aquametrics. So can't really. InfoSend is the as we're discussing with Mr. Hunsaker, addressing one of his concerns. InfoSend is the company that does all of our, they print the bills, they fold the bills, they stuff the bills in the envelope, and they mail the bills out to people. And the majority of that is actually postage. So,
But it's a good service to
It's-
to compete every once in a while.
yeah,
I
it's
mean, at least
something,
every 5 years.
something we can look at.
It looks like you have a
It says-
3-year term.
It's a 3-year term, and the previous year it had $66,000. So if you look at the 15-16 list, InfoSend was on there. We paid them $115,000 of that 115,000, 66,000 was postage. So their actual
Yeah.
amount is only about 50 grand.
But we signed a deal with them 7+ years ago. It was a 3-year deal. And is it just year to year thereafter?
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that because I didn't see the 2010 with the term of 3 years, so I'll take a look into
And
that.
I've had contracts where you spend a 3-year term and then you go year to year afterward.
Right, a lot of them
But-
have holdover provisions, but it's probably time to
Yeah.
at least take a look at it.
Yeah.
And then the last one is, it's another chemical, it's a chlorine, and that's probably one that we could more competitively bid, because chlorine it's not a proprietary product, you can get it from a lot of vendors. So this is the one that Dennis is gonna help us identify, is there a cheaper way to get chlorine, or piggyback on with some other, local agency. So unless there's any questions on those, maybe in a generic context, we can talk about the other one, and that, if there's any direction that the finance committee wants to give for the legal services, or if we want to withhold that until the closed session.
Yeah, I really think we need to withhold it till closed session. I just, highly sensitive, I would think.
Yeah, and that's fine. So we do have some information we can share.
Oh, the only thing I could see really from the direction today that we, maybe we wouldn't need a closed session is, I think we now have a policy in place as a district that requires us to go out to bid for those services at least every 5 years. We know we haven't done it in the last 5 years,
Right.
so it really doesn't matter if it's not, we're not going out to bid because there's a performance issue or there's something else that's driving it. We're going out to bid because we're trying to be compliant with our policy.
Right.
And so if the direction is nothing else that proceed with the RFP process, the only thing I think as a board, at least the finance committee or the board, I'd like to have a little bit of visibility into the scope of work that you may be putting together, the RFP that you're putting together, the bidders that you're inviting to bid, that kind of stuff. And I don't know how, since that may be sensitive, it may not be sensitive. I certainly could see where some sensitivity, like for just completely hypothetically, but if somebody that was being considered to be invited to bid, but we got feedback from peers, either other board members or staff members at other agencies that said, hey, don't use this person for whatever reason, had a bad experience, we may or may not want to share that, in a public forum or not, I don't know, but.
Okay. Well, maybe I can talk process and address some of that. So what we would typically do on this, we would develop an RFP, and we usually look at RFPs that have been done by other agencies or recently done by our agency. In this case, we haven't done it in a while, so I did gather RFPs from other agencies, kind of look and make sure that the types of services that they need are similar to the types of services that we need. And then we put that together, we would put it out in the street, put it out in the street basically means you advertise it, and sometimes you'll just put it on a professional website that's people know where to go to look, and other times you actually contact them. So we are developing a list of legal services or legal firms that have provided services to other water and wastewater agencies in the area. At a minimum, we'll let them know that it's out on the street and invite them to take a look at it and to propose on it. And then when we get the proposals in, we'll have some type of an internal evaluation committee, which may include members of the board, a subcommittee. It wouldn't necessarily be the finance group or an engineering group.
No, it's probably the legal.
It could be
There's
the
a legal
legal,
committee.
or the board may choose to.
Who's the
get
legal
a new-
committee?
Continue.
It's,
Oh.
it's the two of you.
But I
so-
said that year. That's the only
Yeah.
thing.
It's the legal committee.
So that, and that group would help do an initial evaluation, and then we'd kind of shortlist it, and then probably have some kind of an interview process. But before the interview process, we may do exactly what you were saying, is to say, hey, here's our top 5 firms, let's call, and they put references in there. So if Joe's Legal Services submitted, and he says, hey, I've done work for VID and for Livenhain, we would probably call VID and Livenhain to say, should we even bother interviewing this person? Have you been happy with them? And if they say, yes, we've been happy with them, he probably would stay on the short list.
Yeah. So
So all we're discussing is form and process.
Yeah,
yeah, tonight's really just do we go forth with
Yeah.
right.
that of soliciting bids and putting out the RFP? I think we
gotta
have to
gotta
be
live up to
compliant.
ordinance, yeah.
Yeah. So the only other intermediate step maybe, does the finance committee recommend to the board that we go out and do this, or do I just go forward from here?
Well, I think that my personal opinion, I mean, because I was the one who, pushed the policy in the first place. I think the board's already approved that you do this because it's been more than 5
Policy.
years.
Yeah.
So I mean,
policy.
because they approved the policy,
Yeah.
right?
I don't go to the board every time I'm trying to comply with other policies.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part of it, I view the legal firm that we select, be it keeping the same one that we have now or going in a different direction, something that is very relational to the board as well, just like the general manager. So
Right.
I see this as something that we're gonna want to treat similar to how we did when we went out for the GM search, where we're gonna want to do interviews with, at least once we develop a criteria of how we're going to pare down the bidders to a manageable, 5, 6, whatever it ends up being. I'd like to have interviews with them just like we did with the
Right.
GMs. They could
The
be
entire board.
the entire board, of
Right.
course, yes.
Yeah.
The only difference being from that process to this process, in that process, what the attorney who didn't get involved in it at all, and shouldn't have been a part of it. Part of it, I think the GM needs to, because the GM needs to work with the legal team.
Yeah. Well,
So it needs to be more part of it than we let the legal team be part of
This.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I would agree. I would say if you view it as like an interview panel, the GM's definitely gotta be on that panel, gotta have the same kind of scorecard or rating scale, whatever we develop the rate. And then when we look at I don't know, you don't know what we did probably, but we actually used the whiteboards that are in the boardroom.
Okay.
And we had all the different resumes that came in, and we put all the names up, and we all put, like, based off of our rating scale that we had developed, we ranked all of the applicants, yourself included, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we looked and said, okay, well, who's on the fringes? Like, who do none of us like, right? And we got rid of them, and then we had to battle between the people that were kind of close. Like, if I ranked you 1 and how I had you at 2 or something like that, then okay, well then that's probably somebody we want to see. But
Yeah.
if I
And
ranked
then
you,
we turn the board around, and whoever was on the bottom,
that's how you got it.
it's who we pick.
Thanks. Yeah.
So anyway, so we went through kind of a crazy process, but it worked out.
Yeah.
And we got the right person.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Yeah, so I envisioned something similar. The only thing is, might we want to pare down the list before the full board gets involved?
Yes.
I don't know how many submittals we'll get. If we only get 3 submittals,
Yeah.
the whole board. If we get 30 submittals, I don't know if the whole
yeah,
board wants to interview 30
and
firms.
one of the things that we developed for the GM, and I think we need to develop for this process is some way to evaluate at least initially. Like for example, like one of the things we asked for the GM was, do they live locally or are they going to have to relocate from somewhere else? Well, this would be a firm. Do they currently have an
local
office in
office.
San Diego versus like Orange County or LA or something like that? We may want to. We may still want to go with that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that rules them out,
But it's a factor.
but it's a factor, right?
All of the things being equal, you'd probably
Yeah.
want somebody close
Yeah.
by.
Yeah. What other, how many other agencies in San Diego do they serve? And it could be a good thing or a bad thing. You want somebody who's knowledgeable about the region and have experience here, but you also don't want them to be overburdened and that we're just
Right.
we're not that important to them. So
Yeah.
those are the types of things that we'll want to look at and see as we pare down and get down to that group of. I'm hoping that you get at least 9 to 12
Yeah.
bidders, and then we can knock it down to 4 or 5 to kind of bring in for, and then obviously price. That's going to be
Sure.
one of the factors that we look at as well.
I didn't
So-
get real specific in the RFP about the selection process. I say a lot about here's what you have to demonstrate, but I left it a little bit vague intentionally. And I figured while this is out on the street, and I'll probably put it out there for about 3 weeks to give them a chance to prepare their proposal. In that 3 weeks, maybe collectively we can develop what is the ranking criteria so that when it comes in, we can apply that ranking
I
criteria.
think on the street, the longer the better for the board, because we have an opportunity to talk to other board members that they may be working
Yeah.
for and get feedback. As you will be talking to the GMs
Yep.
and getting feedback, we can do that with board members and get a feel. Because we see them all at all these things, and we see, who knows what and who doesn't. Some very honest people out there saying,
Yeah.
yeah, guy's great, and my guy's bad.
Yeah, and so one of the tricky parts is the person versus the firm. So somebody may say, hey, we have this firm, and our guy is great,
Mhm.
and you may get the same firm, but they'll assign you a different
Yeah.
attorney.
Right.
And that's
So-
where those interview questions, that'll definitely be one of the questions that
Right.
we'll ask each of the
Yeah.
firms is, who's gonna be our
Yeah,
legal representation?
and that's in the RFP. They specifically has to tell us who's going to be
Yeah.
the lead person, the person that's at the meetings.
And that's the person we wanna talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the person we have to deal with, and you're gonna have to deal with.
We deal with that on the engineering side all the time. A firm will propose, and you have good experience with the firm, but then they go hire three new
Yeah.
engineers and put them on the team. It's like, well, that's not why we hired you.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So,
yeah.
Cool. But I think for tonight's purpose, I mean, I think, I think it's good to go for.
okay, and what I'll just to let you know, I agree. And what I'll do is I'll let all the board members know that I'm about to do that. I don't want them to be surprised
Yeah.
when they see, where did this come from?
Yeah.
I'll let them know, and I'll give them maybe a week to get back to me if they want to throw themselves in front of the process and say, no, we need to discuss this at the board.
Well, make sure that they know
Okay.
it's an approved policy.
Yeah.
All you're doing is enforcing the policy.
And when I do put it out there, I'll certainly send a copy
Or
to the
implement
board
the
of what the
policy.
RFP is, so
Sure.
you know what we're looking for.
Sure, good job.
Okay,
Thank you.
Cool.
With
You're
that,
welcome.
all of our meeting stuff is done. Meeting adjourned.